we always going to have on the one and only Dr. William Pepper, who is the author of An Act of State and also his recent book, The Plot to Kill King. Very deep into the King research, assassination legacy. How are you doing today, sir?
Fine, thank you, Ron.
It's an honor to have you on here. And also, I just want to do a quick thing. You have unique relationships with both Dr. King and also James L. Ray, correct?
I was close to Dr. King the last year of his life, and I was James L. Ray's lawyer for the last 10 years of his life.
And what is not greatly publicized is the fact that there was a civil trial in Memphis back in December of '99. There was a verdict that said that the government was complicit in the assassination of Dr. King, and you actually helped with that case along with the King family. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I represented the King's family as their attorney for that in that case.
So, basically what happened was that the government was found guilty of killing Dr. King, and there were certain elements in the government that were more prominent in the killing, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And this would be the intelligence agency, in particular the FBI?
Well, it was a multi-organizational, multi-entity operation. The military were involved in a backup role. The key government agency involved in the planning of the assassination was the FBI. And they worked with local Dixie Mafia and organized crime figures, as well as officials of the city of Memphis, to carry out the assassination.
Hey folks, and welcome to another video from aplaintruth.info. Today we're going to go over the anniversary of Martin Luther King. They declare that it's the only non-public official, as far as I know, that's had a national holiday named after him. Why would they do that? He was a great man, but he had some flaws, which we're going to get into here as well. But this is the trial of Martin Luther King. But first I want to read this quote. "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Many of the ugly pages of American history have been obscured and forgotten." Isn't that the truth? "The society is always eager to cover misdeeds with a cloak of forgetfulness, but no society can fully repress an ugly past when the ravages persist into the present." See Iraq, 2 million people killed for lies. "America owes a debt," no, the United States owes a debt of justice which has only begun to pay. If it loses the will to finish off, slackens in its determination, history will call its crimes, and the country that would be great will lack the most indispensable element of greatness, justice. Where now, for the corporate rich, it's just us. Now notice Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 40 Days of Spring. This is a book I want to bring your attention to. Excuse me. It was written by barrister William Pepper. He was attacked for providing trial attorney for Coretta King and family to file civil court action against the Memphis police, the two alleged shooters, and the U.S. government, the military government. For a quarter century, conducted an independent investigation. The jury affirmed his findings, providing the family with a long-sought sense of closure and peace, which had been denied by official disinformation and cover-ups. Now the findings of this exhaustive investigation and additional revelations are presented in the pages of this important book. So Dr. William Pepper, Attorney William Pepper, the attorney for the King family, won a guilty verdict of a $100 settlement where a 30-day trial over 70 witnesses called and jury deliberation of just 2 hours against other unnamed co-conspirators of the Memphis Police Department and the 8-man sniper team backed by the 111th U.S. Military Intelligence Unit were all at the scene of the assassination. So this is the actual court transcript, closing arguments. I'll put it in the show notes. This was from the King Center. Interesting, the King Center out of Atlanta, Georgia, does not include the Act of State book by William Pepper, showing convincingly the conviction of the U.S. government, Memphis police, and others in the assassination of Martin Luther King. But here I want to show you in the transcripts This was the closing transcripts by William Pepper, that there were others involved. The 111th Military Intelligence Group based at Fort McPherson was there. Martin Luther King was under severe surveillance. Ellen Arkin, Memphis Police Department Intelligence Bureau, Intelligence Division, they were in his office too. They were here. Photographers on the roof that Captain Wyden talked about, on the roof of the fire station. Who put them there? Well, they were a psychological operation team, photographed everything throughout the day. There's a film of everything that happened, photographs of everything that happened buried somewhere. And then there's another group that is more sinister. It was the special 8-man sniper unit that was here in Memphis, part of the 20th Special Forces Group. What are the chances? They were here and they were assigned and they were trained for an operation. You heard testimony by a man himself who was a National Security Council operative who was very involved in the Iran-Contra activities. Remember Oliver North, who had been a long-standing operative of the U.S. government, whose best friend was a member of the sniper team. Why was they there? What were they assigned to? Part of the questions. It occurred exactly 1 year to the day of his Beyond Vietnam speech, where he called out the U.S. government as the greatest purveyors of violence the world has ever seen. Now, this was Cardinal Spellman's War, the Vietnam War, and this may be exactly why they assassinated Martin Luther King, the Jesuits, as we'll get into in a minute, because Cardinal Spellman was running the Vietnam War to get the Buddhist influence out of Vietnam. Let's do a quick sidebar into the Vietnam War and Cardinal Spellman's War, the Archbishop of New York City, who ran Kennedy. Kennedy began to end the Vatican's hoax known as the Cold War. Russian KGB. This is from Eric Phelps, Vatican assassin. Having secretly worked together since World War II, began to end that Jesuit Inquisition in Vietnam. Its future high point would be Operation Phoenix, the CIA mass murder of 60,000 Vietnamese in cold blood, according to its director of the CIA, William Colby. So it says here that the president interfered with the Holy Office Inquisition, and that millions of heretic Buddhists were to be exterminated. The international drug trade would explode. American patriotism, liberty would further be destroyed, and Vietnam would be reunited under the communist military dictator loyal to the Pope. Waged under the fight of fighting godless communism. Cardinal Spellman championed America's most disastrous conflict known as Spelly's War, overseen by Spelly's general, the Roman Catholic CFR member William Westmoreland. Remember, according to Colonel Fletcher Prouty in his JFK, the forced movement of 600,000 Roman Catholics on U.S. Navy transport vessels from North Vietnam into South Vietnam was one of the root causes of the Vietnam War. How many people know that? The Arch-Catholic Secretary of the Navy responsible for implementing the Jesuit agitation was the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, Francis Matthews. Knight Matthews' master was America's military vicar, Francis Cardinal Spellman. Later, Spellman made several visits to the war front, calling the American troops the soldiers of Christ, fighting the Pope's crusade against the godless Jew communism. The outcome was 58,000 dead, 80,000 post-war suicides, $220 billion in debt to the Jesuits' Federal Reserve Bank, not to count the many, they talk about 58,000 dead, but there was hundreds of thousands killed in Vietnam, and then we have all the Agent Orange and the cancer-causing agents after that as well. All right, let's get back to the trial in Dr. William Pepper with Martin Luther King's assassination trial in active state. And so the Jesuits are running the Vietnam War. Martin Luther King comes out against it. So here's a little bit of documented evidence that was introduced. The jury concluded overwhelmingly. The overwhelming evidence the government complicitly introduced. The jury includes the 111th Military were sent to Dr. King's location and that the usual police protection was pulled away just before the assassination. The military intelligence set up alleged photographers on a roof of a fire station with a clear view of King's balcony. 20th Special Forces Group had an 8-man sniper team at the assassination location that day. Memphis Police Special Bodyguards were advised they weren't needed on the day of the assassination. Constant police protection was removed. Dr. King's room was changed from a secure first-floor room to an exposed balcony room. Police ordered the scene where multiple witnesses reported the source of the shooting cut down or their bushes would have. So they cut down the bushes that supposedly the sniper shot from after the assassination. Sanitizing a crime scene, police abandoned investigation procedure to interview witnesses who lived by the scene of the shooting. The rifle that Mr. Ray delivered was not matched to the bullet that killed Dr. King and was not sighted to accurately shoot. Okay? And King's family and William Pepper alleged that King's speech calling upon the end of the Vietnam War and his plan for a 500,000 camp-in Washington, D.C. in the summer of '68 were a threat to the dominant and fascist political factions within the government. The conclusion is consistent with U.S. history, past and recent, for U.S. leaders to lie and kill for wars. Please watch this 6-minute evidence of the trial, 8-minute video on the FBI's disclosure, which we showed a little bit in the beginning here. Now, U.S. corporate media did not cover the trial interviews with the King family or textbooks. They did not even cover that there was a full conviction of the U.S. military, the Memphis police, for the full conviction of Mexican police for the assassination of Martin Luther King, and they won $100. But there's no mention of that. But we go to the O.J. Simpson trial, and they got coverage everywhere. 142 million people listened and watched. Apparently, according to Dr. Pepper, William Pepper, he told me this directly when I met him, that Katie Couric was there from the Today Show to report on the King family victory over the government for the assassination of their father and husband, and she wasn't allowed to report that, told she would be losing the job. All right? So this gets into this whole magic bullet theory. The lone gunman in 1968 just happened to kill each one of these three. Never do we point a finger at the real perpetrators until it's many, 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 many years later. So we must understand that Martin Luther King was not perfect. He did say some great things. He did some great deeds. He was a great humanitarian, but he also had his other side, which I want to get into a little bit here, unfortunately, because even though he was a good family man and he had 4 children and whatnot, and he worked in the clergy and whatnot, now they put up a statue of him. It is curious why Martin Luther King was allowed to continue on as long as he did with the speeches and the rallies and how many people he was able to garnish, when back then the loose press controlled all media. So how was he able to get media? To this day, you still can't get media. Well, we find out, and this is work by Eric John Phelps, who is a bigot, who is a racist, who's written about the Vatican assassins, tied the Jesuits and the Vatican to much of the world power today. It's a very good book, but I don't have a lot of respect for Mr. Phelps at all. But he gets into the whole Society of Jesus and what Martin Luther King's relationship with Knight of Malta, Henry Luce, who owned the Luce Press, Time Magazine, Life Magazine, all those, right across from Rockefeller Center, across the street from Francis Cardinal Spellman's St. Patrick Cathedral. And just a side note, it was Luce from Time Magazine who purchased the Sabruder film for the Kennedy assassination for $150,000. So he says the serial adulterer and black socialist communist Martin Lucifer King was controlled by black Freemason A. Philip Randolph. Randolph in turn was controlled by his white massa Cardinal Spellman Jesuit John Lafarge. Lafarge made sure Spellman was accepted with the pro-black, anti-white, Rockefeller-financed NAACP, as well as the pro-black, anti-white Urban League. The order in keeping its centralized black anti-white movement, uncivil rights movement on track made sure there were several FBI agents within the orb of the movement. One of these, Ernest Withers, now a member of the Black Pope's hatefully racist, anti-white, pro-black Nation of Islam, led by Freemason and FBI informant, Tribal Chief Louis Farrakhan. And it goes on to say that Farrakhan was one of the co-conspirators in the murder of the honest Malcolm X. It was Malcolm who stated that the KKK and the NOI have the same paymasters, proving that the Jesuit-ruled false prophet Elijah Muhammad was a serial pedophile who fathered 9 babies to 6 black teenage girls. For this, Malcolm was shot down like a dog. The murder carried out in orders of the white devil Francis Cardinal Spellman. And most important of all, to further centralize power in Washington, why would they do this? Why would they let Martin Luther King expose the civil rights injustice, justifying more income, excising tax to be spent, and creating more federal agencies? What are they doing today? Creating more federal agencies, more jobs for blacks, giving more money to blacks, further destroying white Protestant middle class. They've been doing since the 1600s, trying to get the Protestants, the ones protesting the Vatican Jesuits, out of the country. And that's a large reason why they opened the borders to allow South American, Mexicans, Hispanics, whatnot, to come across the border, because mostly they're Roman Catholics to support the Roman Catholic cause. That's one big argument made for the very long term. One thing to remember about the Jesuits, they are very, very, very long-term planners. So it goes on to say, in Raging Whites, little by little, continuous, incessant black-on-white crime. What are we seeing today? Black Lives Matter, white versus black. So as to say, in the end, a seething white population to act as putty in the hands of the white fascist military director overseen by American Jesuit powers. All right, and then there's also this unfortunate part here that I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but he championed Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood is the creation of Margaret Sanger and Rockefeller, who went down to Puerto Rico and started using women that would come in for abortions and whatnot to seal them up so they couldn't have babies anymore, part of their Planned Parenthood. And they've been founding it ever since. But Martin Luther King apparently was a proponent of the Planned Parenthood, and the Rockefeller created Planned Parenthood. Now, the other part that we need to get into here is the Martin Luther King tapes. These tapes have been sealed until 2027. Now, why would they seal tapes against Martin Luther King when they're trying to out Martin Luther King as a bad guy? Does that make any sense to anybody, unless there's something they don't want to get out yet? FBI director filed a request with Attorney General Robert Kennedy to wiretap King and his associates. Kennedy gave the Bureau permission and tapped their phones and placed hidden microphones in homes, hotel rooms, and offices. Now, why would Robert Kennedy give permission to J. Edgar Hoover? Now, remember, Kennedy was shot as well that year in '68. The FBI was unsuccessful in proving that he had ties to communists. However, it did have something that would reveal embarrassing details about King's life. In January 31st, 1977, Lewis Smith, judge, ordered all known copies of recorded audio tapes and written transcripts resulting from the FBI surveillance of King between 1963 and 1968 to be sealed in the National Archives and away from public access for 50 years. So in the story goes that also that Ralph Abernathy, his close friend, in his autobiography, "And the Walls Came Tumbling Down," he mentions that King was a womanizer. He wrote this about the surveillance tapes. Excuse me. I remember in particular a stay at the Williard Hotel in Washington where they not only put in audio receivers but video equipment. Then after collecting enough of this evidence, they began to distribute it to reporters, law officers, and other people in a position to hurt us. Finally, when no one would do Hoover's dirty work for him, someone in the FBI put together a tape of highly intimate moments and sent them to Mr. King. Now, why wouldn't they release this, folks? Why wouldn't they be putting this out if they're against Martin Luther King? Why wouldn't they be releasing all these sex tapes to discredit him and discredit the black movement and whatnot? Because they don't want it to get out. Well, why don't they want it to get out? Because they want to protect Dr. King's image. There's no other reason for them not wanting to get out if they're against Dr. King. So again, unfortunately, even though Dr. King had many great speeches and said many great things, was he playing for the other team? Was he playing for the Jesuits? Well, let's take one more look here. So Martin Luther King did, in fact, have relationships with the Jesuits. Here in 50 years later, St. Peter's College in New Jersey, King was invited to speak at St. Peter's Michaelmas Convocation by the Board of Trustees, main push coming from Jesuit Father Victor Yanatelli. St. Peter's awarded Dr. King an honorary degree of laws and letters. St. Peter's was the only Jesuit school to give him a honorary doctorate degree. The Jesuits of St. Peter's recognized the significance of Dr. King's great work and supported the cause. Jesuit Father Edmund G. Ryan was the dean of the college, wrote a letter. He praised Dr. King's spiritual principles. I've taken the position in this case and quite proud of it and believe it is according to the best traditions of St. Peter's College, the Jesuit order, and the Roman Catholic Church. Following along the doctrines of the church, they're saying Martin Luther King was. So I greatly admire this man, but there are some things I seriously question today. Here is a picture of a Jesuit, Father Hesburgh from Notre Dame, with Martin Luther King and a "We Shall Overcome" march. And what we're going to see here is a sculpture that was put right outside South Bend, Indiana, and is showing that the Jesuits and Martin Luther King were literally hand in hand. The Reverend John L. Jenkins, Notre Dame president, recalled Hesburgh's describing attending the rally in Chicago. Someone in King's staff called Hesburgh, as the story goes, and Sunday morning and asked him to participate. "What time do you need me?" he said. The priest can go in his car, drove to Chicago, and joined hands with King and others at Soldier Field, gathering in the We Shall Overcome. An unknown photographer snapped the picture. And if you think that Jesuits controlled Martin Luther King, which may be very possible, it's still doing it today. Obama surrounded by Roman Catholic, Jesuit-trained intelligence leaders. They all go to the school at Georgetown Foreign Services School, the Emerson Foreign Services School. That's where all the generals go to. Trump went to Fordham. So there's a piece I did back in 2016. Between 1555 and 1931, Jesuits were expelled from 83 countries. You always hear about the Jews, but you don't hear about the Jesuits being expelled from 83 countries. Now look at them. They're sitting right next to each side of the president and those in power. The Catholic Kitchen Cabinet, Obama and the Jesuits. I'll put this article in the show notes. The Jesuit Oath, which you need to look at, which is very gross. As I said, Trump went to Fordham, Clinton went to Georgetown. They're all closely connected to the Jesuits. Remember that St. Ignatius, ignite the fire. And what do we have here in Santa Rosa in California? They're igniting the fires, folks, on us. And here's Trump's cabinet. All the U.S. Attorney Generals, or most, went to Georgetown Foreign Affairs School. How about Ron Paul being a Jesuit adjunct? Jesuits run the Department of Homeland Security. Janet Napolitano now is running UC Regents in California. Governor Jerry Brown here in California went to Jesuit school, was a priest. Gavin Newsom, the former mayor of San Francisco, lieutenant governor of California, next governor of California. Santa Clara University Jesuit School. It goes on and on, folks. How can you deny the Jesuits aren't running the show? It's all here. I'll put it in all the show notes. They're the real power. Jesuits, the rulers of evil. You must read that book. All right, that's all I got today. Sorry to do a hit piece on Martin Luther King, but they hit Martin Luther King as well when he started to go against their ways of what they wanted for him, it looks like. Speaking out against the Vietnam War. That's why they assassinated him 1 year to the date. The government did it. They need to be held accountable. The Jesuits are behind the government. They need to be held accountable. So this is hopefully getting the information out. Do your own research. Do your own homework. I'll leave some quotes on Martin Luther King. He had some wonderful things to say, inspiration that we all can follow, even if he wasn't the greatest of persons. Anyway, there's a plain truth out. We'll catch you on the next video. Love one another. Peace. Against the Memphis police, the two alleged shooters, and the U.S. government, the military government. For a quarter century, conducted an independent investigation. The jury affirmed his findings, providing the family with a long-sought sense of closure and peace, which had been denied by official disinformation and cover-ups. Now the findings of this exhaustive investigation and additional revelations are presented in the pages of this important book. So Dr. William Pepper, Attorney William Pepper, the attorney for the King family, won a guilty verdict of a $100 settlement where a 30-day trial over 70 witnesses called and jury deliberation of just 2 hours against other unnamed co-conspirators of the Mensa Police Department and the 8-man sniper team backed by the 100.
Assassination was the FBI. And they worked with local Dixie Mafia and organized crime figures as well as officials of the city of Memphis to carry out the assassination.
Hey folks, and welcome to another video from plaintruth.info. Today we're going to go over the anniversary of Martin Luther King. They declare that it's the only non-public official, as far as I know, that's had a national holiday named after him. Why would they do that? He was a great man, but he had some flaws, which we're going to get into here as well. But this is the trial of Martin Luther King. But first I want to read this quote. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Many of the ugly pages of American history have been obscured and forgotten. Isn't it?
We always on to have on the one and only Dr. William Pepper, who is the author of An Act of State and also his recent book, The Plot to Kill King. Very deep into the King research, assassination legacy. How are you doing today, sir?
Fine, thank you, Ron.
It's an honor to have you on here. And also, I just want to do a quick thing. You have unique relationships with both Dr. King and also James Earl Ray, correct?
I was close to Dr. King the last year of his life, and I was James Earl Ray's lawyer for the last 10 years of his life.
And what is not greatly publicized is the fact that there was a civil trial in Memphis back in December of '99. There was a verdict that said...
Not the truth. The society is always eager to cover misdeeds with a cloak of forgetfulness, but no society can fully repress an ugly past when the ravages persist into the present. See Iraq, 2 million people killed for lies. America owes a debt. No, the United States owes a debt of justice which has only begun to pay. If it loses the will to finish off, slackens in its determination, history will call its crimes, and the country that would be great will lack the most indispensable element of greatness, justice. Where now, for the corporate rich, it's just us. Now notice Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 40 Days of Spring. This is a book I want to bring your attention to. Excuse me. It was written by barrister William Pepper. He was attacked for providing trial attorney for Credit King and family to file civil court action.
That the government was complicit in the assassination of Dr. King, and you actually helped with that case along with the King family. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I represented the King's family as their attorney for that in that case.
So, basically what happened was that the government was found guilty of killing Dr. King, and there were certain elements in the government that was more prominent in the killing, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And this would be the intelligence agency, in particular the FBI?
Well, it was a multi-organizational, multi-entity operation. The military were involved in a backup role. The key government agency involved in the planning of the